Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 1 to 5 player game, River Valley Glassworks, designed by Ben Pinchback, Matt Riddle, and Adam Hill, and published by Allplay, who helped sponsor this video. The river is full of beautiful glass of various shapes and sizes, and as a woodland merchant, you see an opportunity to set up shop. But you're not alone. The competition has the same idea, so join me at the table, and let's learn how to play. To set up, find and shuffle these 6 river tiles and then place them in a random order so they create a single row, one after the other, like this. Then put this lake tile where it fits on the far end. These are the game's glass pieces. They come in 9 different colors and 6 unique shapes. If you have 5 players, you'll use all of them. If you have fewer players, return the black ones back to the box. We'll assume we have 2 players in this video. Put all the glass into the included bag and give it a good mix. In this area of each river tile, you'll see either 1 or 2 of these stone symbols. Randomly draw that many from the bag to set onto the related tiles. So 1 here, 2 glass would go here, 1 would go here, and so on. It might look something like this when you're done. The lake tile shows outlined spaces for 5 stones as a reminder to draw that many from the bag to place there. They don't have to go directly into those spaces. Anywhere on the lake tile is fine. Each player now collects one of the double-sided glasswork boards, putting the side face up that shows their glassworks title in large lettering here. Players also collect one of these satchels and a marker. Some of the satchels will have various symbols on their other side, and if yours does, just ensure those symbols are face down. Each player also assigns their marker to the 0 space of this inventory track on the side of their board. Then have each player draw 3 random glass pieces to set onto their satchel. Then the player who last saw a river takes this first player marker, or you can just assign it randomly. And that's the setup. In River Valley Glassworks, you and the other players will compete to collect glass in order to fill the rows and columns of your board, which will score you victory points. Have the most points by the end of the game, and you win. The game is played over a series of turns, starting with the person holding the first player marker, and then going clockwise around and around the table. And on your turn, you'll pick one of 2 possible actions to perform. You'll find these options listed here on your player board, so let's go through them together, starting with placing and gathering. First, you pick any 1 glass piece from your satchel. Its color doesn't matter, only its shape, and we'll see why you might pick one piece over another in a moment. There are 6 tiles that make up the river, and each show one of the game's 6 unique glass shapes in their corners. You now add the piece you chose to the tile showing its shape, an oval in this case. You now pick one of the river tiles adjacent to the one you just added your piece to and gather all the glass from it. So if we picked this one, we'd gain these 2 pieces. In this way, the shape of the glass you chose from your satchel determines which tile it goes into, and that determines which of the 2 adjacent tiles you can choose to collect glass from. If the stone you place goes into this end tile, you won't have a choice. You'll have to collect glass from the one here, as it's the only tile that's adjacent. The same is true if you place a glass on the tile adjacent to the lake. You're not allowed to pick the lake to collect glass pieces from with this action, so you'd have to collect the pieces from this tile. Now you do have one other option you can instead take when adding glass from your satchel to the river. If you have 2 pieces of glass in your satchel that are the same shape, no matter their color, you can choose to add both of them to any river tile and then gather all the glass from one adjacent river tile afterwards as usual. With that understood, let's go back to our original example where we chose this piece of glass from our satchel, added it to the river tile that shows that matching shape, and then chose this adjacent tile to collect all the glass pieces from. After, you then move the now empty tile to the end furthest from the lake. Then you check to see how many stones are showing on the next tile over and draw that many pieces from the bag to add to the empty one. We see 1 stone here, so that's how many pieces we would draw from the bag and add onto this tile. Finally, you now add all the glass pieces you just gathered to your Glassworks board. When doing this, you only pay attention to their color, not their shape. You add your collected glass 1 piece at a time in any order. When adding a color to your board for the first time, it must go into the bottom space of the leftmost empty column. Our next glass to place is also the first time its color is being added to our board, so it must go into the leftmost bottom empty space, which would be here. When you finish placing the glass you collected, you must update your inventory track, so it shows the number of your glass pieces that are in these columns. 2 in this case, so we'd move it to here. And I'll just say, so it's extra clear, you will never move glass from your satchel to your board. Glass in your satchel will go to the river. Glass from the river will go onto your board. With your inventory updated, your turn is over, and now the next player in clockwise order takes their turn. But before moving on, I want to show you what happens as you gain more and more glass over the course of the game. So I'm going to pretend it's already our next turn, and we took the place and gather action again. Let's assume we had collected these glass pieces this time, and we were placing them. If a piece you're placing matches a color already on your board, you must place it in that column on the next empty space above it. So this would go here. This is a new color, so I'd put it into the leftmost empty column. If I placed this one next, it would go above it, and then this one would go here. To finish the action, we'd then update our inventory. We have a total of 6 glass on our board, so we would move our marker here. As the game goes on and more of your board fills up, you may get to a point where you've collected glass but don't have a valid row or column to add it into. For example, if we had just gained this blue glass, our column of blue is already full. We also have this pink glass, but since it's our first pink piece, it needs to go into the leftmost empty column, and there are no empty columns left. If you can't fit a piece or pieces onto your board because there aren't valid spaces for them, they must go into this overflow area here. And there's no limit to how many pieces can end up in this space, and as we'll see later, you don't want pieces here if you can help it. We'll better understand why we might want to collect certain glass pieces over others, or arrange the glass on our board in certain ways once we learn about final scoring. But before we get to that, don't forget, on your turn, you pick one of 2 possible actions to perform. We learned about one option, placing and gathering. Now let's learn the other, known as drawing. With this action, you must collect any 4 glass pieces from the lake, adding them to your satchel. If your satchel ever has more than 5 pieces of glass on it, you must immediately move any of your choosing to your overflow area until it only contains 5. After performing the draw action, you then refill the lake with random pieces drawn from the bag until there are 5 pieces in total here. And that's how a turn is taken. You either place and gather or draw from the lake. After performing either of those options, the next player in clockwise order takes their turn. And turns will continue like this around and around the table until a player reaches or passes 17 on their inventory track. Remember, each time you add stones to the columns of your board, you must update this inventory tracker so it shows the current total amount of glass that you have here, not including any in your overflow. So again, once a player reaches or exceeds 17 pieces of glass in their inventory, the end of the game is triggered. At that point, every player with fewer than 3 pieces of glass in their satchel now refills it to 3 from the bag. You then finish the current round of turns to ensure everyone has had an even number of them, meaning you'd go until the person to the right of the player holding the first player token had gone. Then after, everyone gets one final turn. After that, it's time for final scoring. Keep in mind, because you get at least 1 turn after the end of the game is triggered, you may have more than 17 pieces of glass on your board, and that's okay. Now let's look at the scoring. First, each player scores the rows of their Glassworks board one at a time, going from the bottom upward. For a row to score, there must be a piece in this leftmost space. Then you go to the right until you get to a gap. That row will be worth the points showing along here at the bottom under the rightmost piece of glass before any gap. In the case of this first row, there is no gap, so we go all the way to this last piece, meaning this row is worth 22 points. For this row, we start here again, but then it stops here, so it's worth 11 points. On this row, we get to here before there's a gap, so it's only worth 2 points. You ignore any glass pieces further along after the gap. These rows are worth nothing because, again, a row only scores if there's at least one glass piece in its leftmost space. After rows, you score columns, finding your 2 tallest ones. You then earn the points showing in the topmost glass space of each of those columns. So in this case, both of these columns score. 20 points for this one and 8 points here. If you have a tie for any of your tallest columns, the tie is broken in favor of the leftmost ones. In this case, we'd score this one, and between these 2 tied columns, we'd score the one here. Finally, you lose 3 points for every piece of glass in your overflow. So this would cost us 9 points. The player with the most points wins. In the case of a tie for most points, those tied players share the victory. In this way, when gathering glass, you'll want to consider how best to collect pieces that will fill in rows and columns while keeping as many pieces as possible from also going into your overflow area. Some colors are more common than others, and your player board will provide a guide to this in the area here. In other words, white and pink are more common than yellow and orange. Also notice the columns on the right are worth more than the columns on the left. So making your tallest columns over on this side can score you more points, but it might also create gaps in your rows, scoring you fewer points there. Striking the right balance is the key to success. The game also comes with rules for solo play, where you'll pick one board for yourself and another to flip to its rival side. These show different types of rivals that you can play against. They'll have their own special rules and difficulty level as indicated by the icons here, allowing you to take on different challenges each time you play. But the solo rules I'll leave for you to discover on your own. Otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play River Valley Glassworks. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.